Welcome to Errant Adventures. My name is Steve Morrison, and I'm a writer and game master, and this is my solo role-playing game podcast. In a traditional RPG, I'd have a few friends at the table with me, and together we would roll dice, tell stories, and embark on grand adventures. But this is not like that, except maybe the grand adventures. Instead, it's just me, a handful of dice, and some of my favorite role-playing systems. I'll be using a number of tools to help keep things interesting, and hopefully, together with those tools, I'll be weaving fun, engaging stories. I plan to jump around through a number of different systems, and to do that, I'll be telling stories in season arcs. So I'll follow one character in one world for a while until their arc reaches a satisfying, if possibly grisly, conclusion. Then I'll pick a new system and make a new character, and the next season will begin. I don't know what the future holds, so let's roll the dice and find out what happens. All right, we've finished going through our session 0. We've set up our system, our sector, we've created our character, we've set our truths for the world that we're playing in, and it is time to dive into some actual gameplay. So for the first mission for Lucius Tarquin, exiled son of one of the founder clans, I had in my mind the idea that I got my starship, the Hadrian's Folly, in exchange for a promise or vow. And I was thinking that it was going to be my first vow. And thinking about it, I had the idea that my family doesn't necessarily wish me ill. They just think maybe I'm a little off my rocker. And maybe they're more concerned because I tried to raise the issue that the AI that they control is actually not an AI of human construction, but in fact was created by the Ascendancy, the precursors of the Forge. And we don't actually know what its intentions are towards humankind. And Lucius started to get a little afraid that it was trying to guide at least our clan, if not the rest of the founder clans, towards perhaps nefarious purposes. So they, I think, got a little worried about him, and I think he feared that the AI itself might have a grudge against him. And I haven't really decided if that has any basis, if anything happened that made him actually think that that was going to be the case, or if it's just a sort of base level paranoia built in with the idea that this thing might be doing something nefarious to humankind, and therefore he, as somebody who's trying to raise the alarm about it, might be in danger. He tries to get out of Dodge. And I think the way that he does that is he actually gets a ship from maybe it's not a member of his family, but maybe it's someone who works for his family, part of the house guard or an advisor. Probably an advisor makes sense, somebody who's been around for a while. And the impetus behind giving Lucius this ship is, I will give you the ship. I have gotten you a position as a herald, which is one of the sort of couriers who transports messages across the forge. This advisor says basically, I have gotten you all this stuff. I've gotten you the ship, but I need you to do this thing for me. And that thing is to transport the transport an encoded data packet to the shipbuilder, and that's what he calls this person, the shipbuilder, on a planet called Rampart. And a little bit of like research into this shows that it's going to be that Rampart is in the Veritas sector in the Outlands, and so a little bit further away from the sort of main area of it's further away from the politics of the founder clans, and hopefully a little bit safer. So Lucius agrees to this and swears an iron vow upon a small piece of iron that he actually found as a young man at an ascendancy dig. And that's something that he is interested in, is the ascendancy. And so he has this piece of iron. He kind of clutches it in his fist. And let's actually give a name to the person, this advisor. I was not thinking about this before, but this guy should probably have a name. So let's do a little roll. Let's call him Kaito. So it's Kaito is one of his family's trusted advisors, and maybe an old friend of Lucius from when he was a child, like somebody that he revered and looked up to. So I'm going to make a note of that. Lucius takes this piece of iron out of he probably wears it on a cord around his neck, and he pulls it out from under his shirt and he holds onto it and it says, "Kaito, I swear upon this iron that I will deliver this message to the shipbuilder on the planet Rampart. And in doing so, I will honor the blessings that you have given me by helping me get this ship and get away." And the advisor kind of nods and says, I wish you well, my young man. Good luck. Good luck out there. Stay safe. And perhaps one day you will be able to return. And Lucius boards the Hadrian's Folly for the first time, settles in. His little bot friend curls up in a corner, and as Lucius flips a bunch of toggles and gauges and buttons, and is kind of like looking around, he's like, this must be an older style ship, because I don't feel like these things do a lot of, well, anything. I don't know. What do you think, Brutus? And the little bot in the back kind of like opens up a little bit, and several guns like protrude out of it, and it just kind of like, and it's just like, yeah, I guess you're right. Starship management is not exactly your specialty. That's all right. It'll be fine. And he goes ahead and enters the launch sequence, and the ship takes off. And I think the first thing we need to do is we're going to go ahead and swear that iron vow. So first move for Lucius Tarquin. Let's hope that these dice rolls love me, or at least treat me nicely. When you swear upon iron to complete a quest, write your vow, which we've done. It's transport encoded data package to the shipbuilder on Rampart, and give it a rank, which is going to be, I think, in this case, dangerous. Then roll plus heart. If you swear this vow to a connection, add +1. If you share a bond, add +2. So even though I kind of have this idea that this Kaito is kind of an old family friend, I don't know that it's necessarily, well, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna be kind to myself for this first session and say that this is a connection. They don't necessarily have a bond because he hasn't gone through that sort of narrative, mechanical process of actually developing a bond in that way. But yeah, sure. I'm gonna say I'm gonna get +1 because it is somebody that he knows and knows well enough. So with a plus heart, my heart is 2, +1 for the connection. So that is going to give me a +3 to the roll. I've got a D6 for my action die. I've got 2D10 for the challenge dice, and I'm going to roll. Okay. All right. This is a phenomenal start. So on the initial roll, I rolled a 5 plus 3 on my action die for an 8, and I rolled 2 3s on my challenge dice. So it's a strong hit, and not only that, but I also create an opportunity, which is amazing. So for a strong hit on swearing the vow, you are emboldened, and it is clear what you must do next, and take plus 2 momentum. So I'm going to bump my momentum up to 4, and I am going to take off. It's clear what I need to do next. I take off from my homeworld and fly the Hadrian's Folly out into the outer system, and I engage the E drive, the Eidolon drive, and we are going to carry on our way. And I think the opportunity here is that Lucius gets out of the system without any sort of challenge. And even though there are patrolling ships that belong to his like family's house guard, I think of this as very like clan oriented government. So like this system that they're in is the Tarquin family kind of stronghold, and all of the law in this system belongs to his family. And so even though there is a sort of heavy presence of these ships flying around, none of them challenge him, and he is able to slip out, and he catches the drift and heads out towards the Outlands, towards Veritas sector. And I think I'm going to, since he is following a kind of prescribed route, let's go ahead and make another roll, and we're going to set a course, because I think this will be fun, especially as one of my paths that I chose in character creation is Navigator. So when you set a course, choose one. Follow on the fastest path, take plus 2 momentum on a hit. Follow the safest path, add plus 1. On a strong hit with a match, you charted a new path during the journey. Mark 1 tick on your Discovery's legacy track. All right, so I think starting out here, because there's not necessarily a time frame that he's worried about, I'm going to go ahead and choose the safest path. So we're going to set a course. When you follow a known route through perilous space or across hazardous terrain, roll plus supply. I'm fully stocked and loaded, so that's plus 5 to my action die. Since I'm following the safest path, I'm going to add plus 1 to that, so it's going to be plus 6. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. So I'm going to roll the dice. Crack die on that one. Okay, so I've got 6 plus 4 is 10 on the action die, but I've also got a 10 and a 2 on the challenge dice. So it's a weak hit. On a weak hit, you arrive, but face a cost or complication. Choose one. Suffer costs en route. Make a suffer move, -2, or 2 suffer moves, -1. Face a complication at the destination. Envision what you encounter. Ask the oracle if unsure. All right, I'm going to face a complication at the destination. So I think we see Hadrian's Folly drop out of E Drive in the same sector as the where Rampart would be. And as we come out, we kind of are cruising along, and it's pretty empty space out here. There's not a whole lot of ship traffic, especially around this spot. Lucius gets readings of the star, which is an artificial star constructed, and he's like looking at the scanners and the readings, and is just like, I think that's an artificial star, and it is reading ascendancy energy signals. Could they have actually built a star? That's amazing. And he kind of is caught up in that. And as the ship is approaching the world, he looks down and says, that's not good. And there is a massive toxic whirlwind Not really sure yet what that comes from, what created this sort of like toxic atmosphere, but this just massive whirlwind is whipping around the area where Rampart is located. And it's a small settlement. I mean, there's not a whole lot of people that live there, and it is essentially covered. And so he is going to, he kind of like comes into orbit and tries to wait it out. But after a few hours, it becomes clear from his scans and just his observation that this whirlwind is settled in, and it could just hang out for a while. And, and instead of sort of like waiting it out, because he doesn't have infinite supplies, Lucius is going to make the choice to attempt to bring the Folly down through the whirlwind to land in Rampart. So to do that, we're going to have to go ahead and make a face danger, I think makes sense. So we're going to attempt something risky or react to an imminent threat. Envision your action and roll. If you act with speed, mobility, or agility, roll plus edge. With charm, loyalty, courage, or command, roll plus heart. With strength, endurance, or aggression, roll plus iron. With deception, stealth, or trickery, roll plus shadow. With expertise, focus, or observation, roll plus wits. I think it could be speed, mobility, agility, or expertise, focus, or observation. I'm leaning towards expertise, focus, or observation, since it is piloting the starship, and this is going to take some pretty intense focus to get the ship down safely. So we're going to roll that plus wits, which is my highest stat, so I got a +3 on that, and we're going to hope for the best. So we're coming in, start to reach the outer edges of the whirlwind, and I rolled a 9 for my action die and a 6 and a 9 on the challenge dice. So when the challenge die equals the action die, the challenge die wins in a tie, basically. So that is a weak hit. So on a weak hit, succeed, but a troublesome cost. Make a suffer move, -1. I think this is a super easy choice. It's very tense as he's bringing it in. And so he's a little bit stressed out as the ship is starting to kind of buffet about with the winds. And he's coming in pretty hard. And so I'm going to lose 1 stress. And then I have to make the stress move. So when you face mental strain, shock, or despair, suffer -1 spirit. And then I am going to roll. Ooh, this is interesting. This is different. So if your spirit is 0 or you choose to resist the stress, roll plus spirit or heart, whichever is higher. Heck yeah, I'm gonna try and resist that stress. Absolutely. So my spirit is higher because it's 4 out of 5 right now. And let's see what happens. That was a terrible decision on my part because I got a miss. I got a 9 on the I got a 9 on my action die and a 10 and a 9 on my challenge dice. Oh my goodness. Okay. So on a miss, it's worse than you thought. Suffer an additional -1 spirit or lose 2 momentum. If your spirit is 0, which it's not, you must also mark shaken or traumatized or roll on the table below. Okay. So he is trying to focus on holding the ship together as he's bringing it down in this whirlwind. And I think he hits this sort of section of the whirlwind that feels like it's letting up a little bit. And he kind of relaxes his guard and starts to breathe a little bit easier. And then, boom, the storm hits twice as hard. And it is utterly nerve-wracking as he tries to keep the ship flying in the midst of this horrendous whirlwind. However, he did succeed at succeeded at that initial check. So we do bring the ship down into Rampart in one piece, but boy howdy, was it stressful. And I think that actually makes for our first kind of overcoming of a milestone. We've reached our first milestone in our quest here. And so I'm going to go ahead and mark progress because it is a dangerous, it's dangerous. I get to mark 2 progress. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in 2 boxes there. And so Lucius brings the ship down and lands it on the outskirts of Rampart with a less than dignified thud. And he just kind of slumps back into his seat, his pilot's chair, and just kind of, oh, Brutus, that was the worst. And the bot kind of chirps at him. And he says, all right, well, now we're here. What are the odds that it's going to be difficult to find the shipbuilder? I wish Kaito had been a little bit more direct about where this person might be, but I guess I will have to ask around. So taking a scan of the ship, of the world outside, it definitely does not look super comfy outside. There's a nice, toxic atmosphere. So he suits up in his environmental suit and prepares to head outside. Brutus kind of floats along on repulsor lifts behind him, and Lucius heads out into Rampart. And as he steps off the ship, like there was no sort of official landing pad. And as he steps out, he sees why. Because as he looks across this open space, as much as he can make out, because it is still like whipping wind around, there are maybe half a dozen buildings within sight, and they all look incredibly ramshackle. And as he is sort of looking at them, he looks around and sees that there are these massive pillars on kind of his left and right, which he clearly very nearly hit one on his way down. He smiles a little bit to himself and kind of takes a reading and is like, oh, that's interesting. I think that's an ascendancy ruin. I wonder what kind of pillar that is. He's going to kind of look at it and be like, I shouldn't get distracted. I need to find the shipbuilder, and I can figure it out later. And so he looks around a little bit and sees a long hall, for lack of a better word, with a flashing neon sign outside that says, "Beer here." And he's like, well, that's probably a good place to start. And he heads in that direction. As he walks up to the building, he sees there's an airlock, which he steps into. It closes behind him, pressurizes, and then the inner door opens, and he can see that there are, maybe half a dozen patrons in this bar. There's kind of like a soft sort of jazz music playing as he steps into it. And the bartender kind of looks over at him and nods. Lucius kind of walks up to the bar and like sits down on a seat and unseals his helmet. And as he does so, as the air of this place rushes in, it just reeks of cheap beer and sweat. And he kind of like looks around, and there are half a dozen rather rough looking individuals in here. And the bartender says, "What do you want?" And Lucius says, beer, I guess. And I'm looking for somebody. I'm looking for the shipbuilder. And let's go ahead and gather some information. So when you search for clues, ask questions, analyze evidence, or do research, roll plus wits, which again, I'm pretty good at that. Got +3 in my wits, and here we go. Well, the dice have clearly turned against me, as I've got an action score of 6 and 2 9s for my challenge dice. On a miss, your investigation unearths a dire threat or reveals an unwelcome truth that undermines your quest. Pay the price. All right. So I think he says this, and the sort of chatter that was going on in here stops. And like all 6 of the people that were sitting in here all turn and look at Lucius. And the bartender says, "You're going to be disappointed." And Lucius is kind of like, "Why? What do you mean?" And the bartender says, "The shipbuilder would kill you just for asking questions. And if you think that you're going to talk to her, well, you're a fool." And he drops down a pint of beer on the bar and says, "You shouldn't ask questions about the shipbuilder, kid. It's an easy way to get killed." And then turns and walks away. When the bartender walks away, one of the other people in the bar kind of sidles up and leans against the bar and looks at Lucius and says, "So you're looking to grab the shipbuilder's attention, huh? Well, I might just have a proposition for you." And Lucius kind of turns and looks at this fellow who is in kind of drab clothes, has a similar kind of environmental suit and helmet tucked under his arm, and some sort of like repeating like laser pistol or something like that, kind of slunk down his hip. And Lucius says, "What do you mean? What do you know?" It's like, "Well, me and my friends," and kind of nods at the other kind of 4 or 5 people in here. "We've been trying to get to the shipbuilder for a while now, and well, we could use one more." And Lucius kind of says, "Well, what do you mean you've been trying to get to the shipbuilder?" "Well, she's holed up in her hangar on the outskirts of town, and well, you see, she's got a fancy defense shield, keeps her safe from the whirlwinds and anything else. And well, it's a mighty fine shield, and she's a mighty nasty lady. So we're going to take it from her." Lucius says, I'm not comfortable doing that. I don't think I'm the right person for that." The guy says, "Well, that's your loss. The only way in is with me and my lads. She hasn't come out for weeks, and when she does, well, she's usually accompanied by a pretty nasty bot." And then kind of like looks and points at Lucius's bot, which is kind of like floating by his shoulder, and says, "Actually, looks a lot like that one there." And suddenly he's looking at Lucius with a certain amount of suspicion in his eyes, and he says, "You wouldn't happen to be from the same places? Where did you get that, boy?" And Lucius kind of looks at Brutus and says, "Nowhere. Just picked him up along the way." And he says, "Well, a bot like that could make getting through the shield just a little bit easier. I'll tell you what, boy. Give us the bot, since you don't want to get your hands dirty, and we'll let you walk out of here. No problems." Lucius says, I am not giving up Brutus." "Brutus! Oh boy. You are in some serious trouble." And the other ruffians in the bar stand up. I think at this point, Lucius is going to like raise his hands and be like, whoa. Hey, guys. Let's talk about this. why don't we come to an agreement? Maybe I can help you get in touch with the shipbuilder. And, maybe that means you joint use of Brutus. And, then we don't do anything drastic. And he's trying to compel them. So he's trying to persuade or make them an offer. And I think he's trying to pacify them. So he's going to roll plus heart, which is +2. All right. So I've got a 7 on my action die. I've got a 3 and an 8 on my challenge dice, which is a weak hit. So on a weak hit as above, but their agreement comes with a condition or complication. And envision what their counteroffer is. All right, so I think the counteroffer is, all right, you come with us so we can keep an eye on you. And so you don't try to do anything crazy with your bot once you get away. And he says, all right, well, that's fine. As long as you don't want me to shoot anybody or hurt anybody, I can come with you. Maybe we can work something out. And they say, all right, well, let's go. And they kind of grab him and pull him up. And the bartender is just kind of in the back there shaking his head a little bit. And after they suit back up, they step back out into the elements. And I'm going to go ahead and mark 2 more progress on my vow there. So they walk for maybe 10, 15 minutes as the storm continues to whistle and whip around. And they come to a warehouse hangar on the outskirts of town, just like the gentleman said. And there is a barrier surrounding it. And looking at it, Lucius recognizes it as not coming from a standard sort of shield generator, but is actually being generated by one of the pillars, which is close to where this hangar is located. And he kind of whispers under his breath, he's like, that's ascendancy tech. The guy he's with is like, what now? And he's like, nothing, just marveling at that shield. And as they get close, the guy turns and says, all right, now, here's how this is going to work. You're going to fly your bot into the shield, and it'll hopefully short it out. And Lucius kind of gives him a look and is like, really? That seems like a terrible decision. Like, what do you mean? Like, well, this shield is obviously designed to keep even advanced bots out. Like, I don't think flying Brutus into it is going to do anything. Well, you're going to try it anyways. He's like, well, hold on. Let me think here. And he's kind of like looking at it, and I'm going to try and secure an advantage. Assess the situation, make preparations, or attempt to gain leverage. And I think this is going to be with expertise, focus, and observations. I'm going to roll plus wits on this. And I'm actually going to use my archivist path, which is my other path asset that I chose at character creation, which is the bearer of a digital archive of specialized knowledge. When you secure an advantage or gather information using lore recalled from your studies, add +1. If you have ample time to search the archive, add +2. So I don't have ample time, but I can add the +1. So I'm looking at a +4 with my wits. So here we go. All right, so I got a 9 on my action die. I've got 2 2s on my challenge dice, which gives me a strong hit with an opportunity, in fact. So on my secure an advantage, on a strong hit, take both. So I get +2 momentum and +1 on my next move. So I'm going to take my momentum goes up to 6, which is awesome. And I think because I got a hit with my archivist, I envision the obscure but helpful knowledge you put to use and take +1 momentum. So I get to add another momentum, which is nice. So I'm up to 7 momentum. That's going to be handy at some point. And I'm going to go ahead and say that in his studies of the ascendancy and of their like shield tech, Lucius found information about the shield frequencies, and that there were times where they could tune them to a specific frequency, and that would allow certain things that match that frequency to pass through the shields where other things couldn't. And so he is going to try and alter his gear. He's going to attempt to surreptitiously send a message to Brutus to create like a resonant frequency in his own tech, and then Lucius is also going to do this so that they will be able to pass through. And I think to do that, he's going to have to face danger, because if they notice him doing something hinky with his equipment, they're not going to be super happy about it, and they're probably going to try and kill him. So he's going to attempt something risky to do this, and he's going to have to do it with deception, stealth, or trickery, which is plus shadow. Not his strong suit, but we'll see what happens. So he's got +1, and then +1 going forward because of the strong hit on the secure and advantage. So +2. Here we go. +2 with shadow. Oh, that's not good. Okay, so this is how it goes. So I got a 4 on the action die. I've got a 10 and an 8 on the challenge dice. He completely misses. You fail, or momentary success is undermined by a dire turn of events. Here's what's going to happen. So yeah, he succeeds at like creating this change in frequency, but they notice. And the first guy that he was talking to was like, "Hey, what are you doing? Get your hands off that." And they point their weapons at Lucius, and he kind of like raises his hand up. And what is he going to do here? Because I think he wants to make a run for it, but all right. So yeah, so here's what I'm going to do. We're going to pay the price. So when you suffer the outcomes of a move, choose one. Mark the most obvious negative outcome happen. Make the most obvious negative outcome happen. Envision 2 negative outcomes. Rate 1 is likely. Roll in the following table. And it specifically said you fail, or a momentary success is undermined by a dire turn of events. All right. I think he succeeds, and the guy who saw this turns to him and says, "Hey, what are you doing? Get your hands up. Get your hands off that," and raises his pistol, his repeating pistol up, and I think pulls the trigger. I'm trying to decide if the dire threat here is that, the dire turn of events is that combat just starts right now, or if I have the opportunity to try and face danger to avoid it. So you know what? I'm just going to say he takes a shot, and Lucius is going to lose a health and has to endure some harm here. So we can suffer -1 for minor harm, -2 for serious harm, or -3 for major harm. So I'm actually going to take it down to 3 out of 5 on my health. I'll call it a serious harm. And I can choose to resist, rolling either health or iron. Right now my health is higher with +3, and see what happens. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to try and shake it off or do something like that. So here we go. I've got a 9 on the action die. I've got a 3 and a 2 on the challenge dice. So that's a strong hit. So I shake it off. If you're not wounded, take +1 health, or embrace the pain, take +1 momentum. I'm going to take the health back. So I'm going to go back up to 4. And now since that kind of popped off, he's not interested in trying to fight, knowing that he can get through the shield. So Lucius is going to try and sprint forward and like dive through the shield, hoping that this works. So we're going to again face danger, this time with speed, mobility, or agility. So we're going to roll plus edge. +2 for my edge. No other bonuses. I've got a 5 on the action die. I've got a 6 and a 1 on the challenge dice, which means I would have a miss, and it's going to get really bad from here. But I have 7 momentum, so I'm going to burn that momentum down to 2, and I'm going to cancel out both of the challenge dice, which is going to make it a strong hit. So that is Brutus and Lucius are able to run through the shield before the other members of the raiding party are able to kind of continue attacking. And Lucius gets on the other side and is kind of like breathing heavily. And the guy on the original guy that talked to him is kind of like shouting like, I'm going to get you, boy. I'm going to shoot you when next time you come out of there. And, is just calling out all these terrible things at Lucius. And Lucius is just like, whatever, man. This is, oh boy, is this what being a herald is going to be like? And turns and starts heading in towards the buildings. And I'm going to go ahead and mark another 2 progress for my vow, which brings me up to 6. So we're sitting pretty good, and I think we're getting close to completing it. I think the last thing is as he's walking up, he comes to a doorway, and there's a screen there, and a hatch opens above the door, and an automated like turret protrudes and points down at him, and then a female voice speaks on the screen and says, I don't know how you got through my shield, but you have 1 minute to explain yourself, or I'm going to splatter your brains on the ground behind you. Lucius holds up his hands and says, I'm a herald. I was sent with a message, an encoded data packet for the Shipbuilder. Please don't shoot. And I think he is going to have to try and persuade the Shipbuilder to let him in. So we're going to roll compel, charm, pacify, encourage, or barter, roll plus heart. I'm trying to think if I should try to secure an advantage first. Yeah, so I think I'm going to do that. So I'm going to hold up. So Lucius like holds up his credentials, his herald credentials, and the encoded data packet to verify what he's saying. So he's trying to essentially use that to show that he is in fact telling the truth. So we're going to do that with charm, loyalty, courage, or command, or expertise, focus, or observation. I think it's probably going to be heart again. So we're going to roll plus heart. Okay, it's a weak hit with a 4 on the action die, a 3 and a 10 on the challenge dice. So I get to choose one. I can take +2 momentum, or I can add +1 on my next move. I'm going to take +1 on my next move. So I'm now going to try and compel, as he says, please don't shoot. I have all my credentials here. I have the data packet for you. Just please don't shoot me. And is going to roll plus heart, +1. So that'll be +3 total to the roll. Okay. It's a weak hit. I've got a 5 on the action die, and I've got a 2 and a 5 on the challenge dice. So on a weak hit, I take +1 momentum, but their agreement comes with a condition or complication. So I think the counter offer is, what would be something the Shipbuilder would ask for in return, like their counter offer? All right, so I think it is going to be, all right, I can see your credentials. I believe you. I am going to let you in. However, I want you to power down your bot and leave it outside. Lucius goes, okay. I guess that's okay. And kind of turns to Brutus and says, hey, Brutus, take a nap. And the combat bot sort of closes in on itself, settles down, and rests next to the door and powers down. At which point the door opens and Lucius enters. And I think go ahead and mark 2 more progress on my vow. It's going to take me up to 8 out of 10 progress. And I think this will be a good point to go ahead and try to fulfill that vow. So I'm going to go ahead and roll and see what the dice say. So I've got 8 on my progress. I'm rolling just the challenge dice this time to see how this turns out. Okay. So I got a 6 and a 3 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. So vow is fulfilled. Mark a number of ticks on your quest's legacy track equal to the rank of the vow. So it's 2 ticks for a dangerous vow on the quest's legacy. Perfect. And he walks in and it goes down through this hallway past a couple of other sort of like turrets that have been set up sort of haphazardly. And he then emerges out into a somewhat large hangar bay where there's just all sorts of pieces and parts scattered around. As he enters, he sees that there is this woman standing kind of off to one side, close to like an office door, holding a pulse rifle on him. And his hand's still up. Lucius is like, you're the shipbuilder, right? And she says, yeah. Here's your packet. And he like looks around for a place to set it. And she kind of gestures with the rifle at a table off to one side. He sets it down and she kind of like steps forward. As she gets a little bit closer, she squints at him and she is wearing kind of these grease-stained work clothes, but she's also wearing a veil over her face. And so he can't see that she's squinting at him, but it feels like she's inspecting him. And then she says, take off your helmet. He's like, okay. You're not going to shoot me, are you? She says, take off your helmet. And he does, unseals it, pulls it off. And he's got short, sandy blonde hair, probably in like his early to mid 20s. And he just kind of like shakes his short hair out a little bit. It's a little matted down with sweat from the stress of the last few hours, and looks at her sort of expectantly, like, okay. And she says, what's your name? Lucius. Luke. You can call me Luke. The pulse rifle kind of comes down a little bit, and she says, what's your last name, Lucius? And he says, and she says, don't lie. I can see that you're trying to lie. Don't do it. And he looks down, swallows, and says, it's Lucius Tarquin. And she at last lowers the rifle completely, sets it down on the workbench next to her, and she laughs. And she reaches up and pulls off the veil, and she is probably 20 years his senior and has very kind of sharp, defined features and very similar sandy blonde hair. And she walks over and wraps him in a hug as he stares at his aunt, Aurelia Tarquin. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures. If you enjoyed the show, please tell your friends, family, pets, really anybody about it. And head over to iTunes to leave a review so more people can find me. If you want to follow the show on Twitter, you can find it at Errant Solo Pod. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.